want beautifully layered and detailed scrapbook pages, but they aren't always that easy to achieve. Add too few elements and the page ends up looking plain and simple. Add too many and those extra elements can really distract from your photos. What if I told you that there was a way to effortlessly add layers to your projects? That's what we're doing today. Simple ways that you can add layers and details onto your layout without going over the top. I'm jumping right on in with a tip. First up for you today, the cut file that I'm using today is a floral tag, and when you cut it out, you'll notice the rings at the top of the tag, they become detached. So it's a little bit tricky to know exactly where to place them. What you can do though is what I'm doing right here. I'm using the negative space that you would normally discard as a guide for the position of the rings. This is an exclusive design for the Cut of the Month members. I'll leave a link to the membership in the description box below. Today's focus is on layers, so let's get started with two very simple ideas. Almost every layout that I create begins with these two paper layers, the first being a frame for the page and the second being a photo mat. If you'd like your page to almost automatically feel put together, use the same pattern paper for both of those frames. Those two things alone will help you create 4 layers for your layout. It's now time to add in the cut file, and guess what? That's another 2 layers. Do you remember these? These are embellishment clusters I created as part of my clustering series that's happening right now. I'll be sure to leave a link to that below. I was pretty keen to try and get one of these onto this layout. In a perfect world, this would be a great way to add a stack of layers into your layout super quickly. Ideally, you would sit down and create a bunch of embellishment clusters all in one go, and they would be sitting here waiting for you to create with. The big problem with this for me is that the clusters never seem to work out. They seem to be either too big or not the right shape, the wrong colors perhaps. I could never get a pre-made cluster to fit onto a layout that I'm working with. Maybe it's just how my brain works or my creative process, but I find it so much easier to build out my clusters when I'm making the page. I really did try to make this one fit. So if you're working along with the clustering series with me and you are creating standalone clusters, just keep that in mind. I'd recommend building out the clusters with me, but using maybe repositionable tape, because as you can see here, I am actually going to pull apart the cluster that I made. I'm going to be using a lot of these same elements, but I'm going to put the cluster together in a way that perfectly fits my page. This is a summer themed scrapbook page, and I really wanted to pull out the beautiful yellow in this collection. The design for the layout was inspired by the cut file tags. I knew I wanted to cut them out quite large so that they would fill the background of the layout. I also wanted to use them as an anchoring point for my photo and all the lovely layers of embellishments. The flow of the page is horizontal for this one, and that's because there's a horizon in my photo. This is my sister and I at the beach, and you can see the horizon in the background. Now, I didn't want to break the flow of that line, so I purposefully chose to place the tags in that horizontal position rather than a vertical position. I've also added a tag on the right. I was finding it to be a little bit left-hand side heavy, especially because those tags are quite large. These Pink Fresh Studio collections have a bunch of these envelope tag elements, and I do sometimes struggle to use them up. So this was the perfect spot for one of those. I am just going to run with 2 embellishment clusters for this layout. Normally I would go with 3. I know it's great to have these creative rules that we follow, you know, the rule of thirds, a visual triangle, but sometimes it's actually perfectly fine to break the rules. Do what's best for your specific layout. And for this page, I really just felt that that horizontal design meant that it would be best suited to just the two clusters. Now you might be thinking that it's a little bit plain towards the bottom of the layout there. Not to worry, I do have a plan for that. First up though, I do want to build out these clusters. I have started with larger pieces of ephemera and I'll always use those as the base for the cluster, and then I'll add in layers of smaller embellishments. Using a variety of different sizes of embellishments on your page helps to create that layered look. Onto the plan for the bottom of the layout, and I am going to position a very small title at the bottom here. I've used puffy stickers from the collection and I have actually stitched them in place with my sewing machine. I've just started working on a video all about stitching on paper, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. If you'd like me to answer a specific question about how to sew onto paper, be sure to leave that in the comments below. Did you see that too? The entire top section of my layout was not attached to my background until just now. I've built the base of the layout very separately to the top layers and clusters. I wanted their tags and embellishments to be very centered for this layout. And as I'm building the clusters, I don't know how far they're going to extend to the left or right. So I don't actually know where center is until everything is finished. As soon as I know exactly how far everything is going to extend, I can then position the entire piece very centered on the page. Another way that you can very easily create a layered look for your layout is to add elements on top of your photos. I have kind of made this one a bit of a rule for myself. I very rarely will have a layout where the photo is the top layer. I like to add little bits and pieces on top of my photo. I find it really helps the page feel more put together, and it's the perfect use for those smaller embellishment pieces. I found this die-cut butterfly just kicking around with these supplies. I must have cut it for a previous project and then not used it. So I am going to include that here, and I have added an enamel dot down the center. They were actually from a different collection from Pink Fresh Studio, but coordinated perfectly. And that's the layout done. Of course, I will leave you with a bunch of close-up images so you can see all of the layers and the details of this project. Summer is such a fun season to document, especially when you have a bunch of photos to choose from. If you're looking for more simple summer scrapbook ideas, be sure to watch this video next. I share 35 layouts that are sure to inspire. I'll see you all again very soon. Until then, bye!